Partisanship policy guidelines regarding the political activities of the board of directors are reviewed frequently. The League of Women Voters of Pullman is fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and practice. These concepts are central to our current and future success in engaging all individuals, households, communities, and policymakers in creating a more perfect democracy. We acknowledge and honor the first people of the Palouse region and their descendants, including our neighbors, the Nez Perce, Colville, and Coeur d'Alene tribes. So, to begin, let's do a quick review. There are note cards on the chairs. You may ask as many questions as you like. So if you need more, please grab one from another chair. We have more up here at the front. Please make sure your questions are legible and raise it in the air, and a league member will gather it for you. All questions will be sorted by topic, so duplicates can be removed. So you also might not hear your exact question as it may be paraphrased. I will send all other, we might not get to all the questions this evening, so if we do not, I will gladly send the rest of the questions to our candidates via email. So please write as many as you would like. Please silence your cell phones and refrain from any disruptive behaviors such as booing or clapping. As a reminder, we will do 3 minutes for each candidate for opening and closing remarks, and each answer for questions will be 2 minutes. And I will repeat the question for each candidate. So let's begin with opening remarks, and let's start alphabetically. So let's start with Representative Mary.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the League for giving us this wonderful opportunity to meet with constituents. Can you hear me okay? I'm watching you. Okay, great. And thank you for those who are online as well, participating in this forum. I've enjoyed working in the legislature for the last 9.5 years. I was appointed in 15 and was totally green and deer in the headlights. But you know, now I'm looking back at that, and we had a really tough session this year, and I won't lie, it was as challenging as any that we've experienced before in terms of just, you know, hard feelings and division that should not have been there. We've always been able to work together at some level. But, you know, I was sitting in the floor of the House at 2 o'clock in the morning and thinking about what are we doing? What are we doing here? I mean, it's brutal, and we're debating for our lives, knowing that ultimately we're not going to win that debate or win the vote. But in reality, what we're doing is we're giving voice to the concerns of our constituents. And it's incredibly important that you have people that can understand the needs of our constituents and voice it well, so it's on the record, and that our concerns in our region are considered and respected. Because ultimately, legislating is a process, it isn't a point in time. And so that process will evolve, and maybe some of those words will ring true in the next session or the next session, and our concerns will be counted as legitimate and important. I've been mastering the nuances of legislating. I enjoy doing it. It's built on relationship. The relationships that I have been building over these years are long and deep, and those relationships have allowed me to work with, for example, the head of our transportation committee, who serves on the environment and energy committee that I am ranking on. We have worked together on issues and have collaborated, and that relationship resulted in getting the only new funding for the airport in Pullman, which made it possible that that airport is built without any debt, and it will prosper this region for decades to come. So it's been an honor to serve in this capacity, and I enjoy that process of building trust and representing the community and getting to know all of you. And I look forward to the events this evening and to hear all of your questions. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Mary. All right, Patrick.
All right, hello everybody, and also thank you all for coming out, and thank you for the League of Women Voters. Obviously, you are the dedicated ones who are passionate about the system and want to be engaged. So often, though, people are disheartened or disengaged from the process and then losing faith and trust in some of our electors. And that's no individual's fault, and that's more of a systemic problem in our culture. And I really appreciate all of you coming out and showing your engagement, regardless of where you end up voting after tonight. So just big thank you to all of you for that. My background has been a little bit ups and downs for me personally. I started out in Spokane Valley. My family, my father was a union worker who was fired after going on strike. And so we kind of had a little bit of a tougher childhood for me, but not too bad. We got back on our feet. We went to college, got a new degree, got a new job. And that kind of laid some of the groundwork for me of building off of what you have, working hard, but also the effect that luck and opportunities, both positive and negative, can have in people's lives. And so I try to come at things from a perspective of what is the underlying thing that people need in order to not have a minor setback destroy everything for them, as well as what can a community need to get forward. My recent work has been as a firefighter up in Spokane County. And I've been on a couple of the local wildland fires, the one that went through Medical Lake last year, and the ones that went through Malden and Pine City before that. So I've seen a lot of the firsthand results of those on our communities, and I'm really passionate about getting better preventative systems in place and better recovery afterwards. We can't always prevent everything. So that's one big issue for me. And another is, and I think Mary touched on this, that fundamentally this job, the title is representative. And I feel like so many of our engagements are us talking to you. And I really want that to flip. I need you to be talking to our representatives. And that's why I made a big point of thank you all for being those people who come out and do that. Because we need that voice to be that representative. That we need to know what you need so we can do that for you. So that's me in a nutshell. And
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so it is time for questions from our audience. You will each have 2 minutes once I begin. Oh my gosh. Your 2 minutes will begin once I finish the question. I will repeat the question for each candidate. So let's start with our first question. Let's start with Mary. In your opinion, what should be the legislative priorities in the next legislative session?
For me, I think that there's a couple of things that really matter. I'm ranking on energy and environment, energy issues, really baseline all of our economic questions that we will deal with. And it also involves what kind of revenues and taxation that the majority party will see necessary. So for me, I look at the energy policies as fundamental and bringing the cost of living down. Cap and tax hurts families, and it hurts communities, and it hurts businesses, and it hurts our state, and it hurts our agriculture. We had also the gas ban on buildings, which is costing all of us in terms of the tax obligation that will be required to meet those requirements on our buildings. So I think that's going to be a big one for me. And then the last one is the impacts that the renewable energy policies that were passed in our state are having on our local communities, how it's tearing friend against friend, farmer against community apart, but more importantly, it's unsettling the economy of our region as well. And I think that we need to give more local control so that we can have a say in how much, when, and where these projects go. And that is one of my top priorities in the legislature, is to build momentum for getting a voice that's meaningful. We can't continue to marginalize an entire community and expect that these large energy companies can exploit our weaknesses and vulnerabilities to profit from it. And I think we need to have a real legitimate say. And so that's what I'll be working on.
Thank Thank you. Patrick, in your opinion, what should be the legislative priorities in the next session?
So obviously now I've got energy in my mind because I just heard about it for a couple minutes, and that is a huge one for me as well. I do respectfully disagree on the impact of some of those policies. I think a lot of them do also have a lot of upside, but I will acknowledge, tailored for from an Olympia and Seattle mindset and need to be readjusted to take into account the local communities. So things like the existing initiatives to repeal whole chunks of them, I think go too far, and we need to do smaller changes to tailor things for the area. As far as other topics, I've been meeting with a lot of the school boards. I feel like there's a lot more we can be doing to support these schools here. Again, it's that large city mindset with big strokes that don't really cover places like Endicott. When you've only got 60 students that you're asked to have 0.2 administrators. What is a 0.2 administrator? That's not a thing. There needs to be a floor to things like that of, okay, you get one administrator, and then if you get big enough and you want a part-time person, maybe you can have a 0.2, whatever that means, but you can't have partial people. So I want to see a lot of those, adjustments. And so I don't know that I've got a single one area that needs the focus, but this region needs that voice in Olympia saying, let's tweak the stuff that you came up with for where you live so that it also works for where we live.
Thank you. All right. Patrick, we'll start with you this time.
All right.
School budgets keep getting smaller. How will you find money for schools?
I mean, that is a fundamental part of our constitution in the state, is that schools are a priority, right? And they do continue to not get full resources and funding they need. And there's a lot of underlying reasons for that. Some of it is increasing costs and the ways that we fund them don't keep up. Some of it is what I was just talking about with the partial people, get into the nursing and, how do you have a person, especially in a community out on this side where you don't have a base to pull from of 50 qualified people. How do you even attract somebody into a role where it's only part-time? So we need to really be looking at raising those floors, like I was saying, so that these smaller schools actually have enough resources to function. And so that we also need to be looking at the insurance requirements so that they are able to be reasonably insured, and those costs aren't eating into their entire budget, because they're required to carry the insurance, but they don't then have the budget to have their teacher. And that how does that help? So it's a lot of giving these areas more resource based on their baseline need, not just based on X number of students that exist.
Thank you. Mary, how will you find money for schools?
Well, I learned from our appropriations chair last week that we're $7 billion behind on funding for education. But I would like to understand better what the value is that we're getting for increased funding. At the end of the budget year, this last session, we were funding somewhere between $16,000 and $19,000 per student, K through 12. And if that was a shortfall of funding to get good outcomes, then I think that would be fine. But through it all, I don't think we're addressing the real issues that are behind the students that are struggling and to recover from learning loss. And I think that we need to rethink how that funding goes into the classroom and what funding is going for ancillary services. And so in that regard, it's a reprioritization of education. And I hope that we can have that conversation in the appropriations committee, because we've added a lot of tasks onto the education budget that may or may not be serving our students well. and I would like to see us fix that. One of the things on the energy front is that we are changing out the buses from gas to electric before the gas buses have reached their end of useful life, and they're not practical in our side of the state, and they're much more expensive to purchase. That's a major driver of the school budget. We've added 2 meals for every student into the school program, and as we're discussing the quality of food, I don't think the quality of food is adequate for a good school outcome for the children.
Thank you. All right, Mary, it's your turn to go first. Please explain your ideas about removing the Snake River dams.
That's a hot topic in our region, I'll tell you that. And there's so many layers. I fought my whole life, my whole political life, to save our dams. And this time, I think the threat is real. The process was flawed. We did not have a seat at the table. It feels as though the die has been cast and it's not in our favor. And the idea that the replacement of the services could be done, I mean, it's a catastrophic loss, not only to our region, but to our nation, because this is a major infrastructure that has provided the resources for the West Coast to be competitive in a global marketplace. And to lose that infrastructure and the services, the whole menu of services that they provide is catastrophic, and it will fundamentally change our region forever. On the issue of the main predicate for removing the dams is fish, I've been listening carefully to the people in the tribal community, and they also speak of the historic harms that they want to have healed by taking down this infrastructure. The idea that the trauma that they've experienced historically has legitimacy, and I think that there must be a way to come to the table with those groups of people and really address our care and concern, but also address that we can do more by not tearing something down from somebody else, but building up for both. And I think that can be done, but it also has finally a play with the renewable energy being replacement, and that's not possible.
Thank you. Patrick, please explain your ideas about removing the Snake River dams.
All right, so yeah, I tend to agree with Mary on the die being somewhat cast. They are federally owned. There is only a limited amount the state can do. It can voice strongly however it wants to, but at the end of the day, it's not going to end up being fully our call. So regardless of the decision, I understand that it is not easy, but I think we do need to be looking at how to start mitigating in case they do come down. And that would be building out some of that infrastructure that can't be built instantly. It would not be a quick transition, but we should be starting that. If nothing else, it provides additional infrastructure and transportation if the dams do stay, and if they don't, then we have a backup to fall onto. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, Patrick, we'll start with you this time. How will you encourage citizens to help solve the problems from climate change?
I don't think it's a citizen's issue. I think that to a large extent, most of this is the result of behavior from large companies, and that the citizens have very little current impact. You can vote with your dollars sometimes, but when there's only one vendor for who your power is coming from, you don't really have that power right now. You can obviously work with your legislatures on what you'd like to see done, but I think where we need to be pointing some of the attention and blame is on the large businesses that have been profiting off the damage they're causing, and hold them responsible.
Thank you. Mary, how will you encourage citizens to help solve the problems from climate change?
This is, I would say that climate change policy is an existential threat to the people in our region. And there are better ways to help mitigate and adapt to the changes that we are experiencing, rather than to tear down a free market economy that is strong and robust, to use that free market economy to innovate and grow energy in a programmatic way without taking down the economic resources required to prosper this generation. I also have a sense that it's wholly unfair that we've raised a whole generation of people on an existential threat narrative that gives them no sense of hope for the future, when those are the great minds that we need to innovate and develop the next new technologies that will make all of the things that we're doing today either unnecessary or redundant. I think our real path forward is to utilize the resources we have to continue to prosper our communities and give people hope, while we're innovating in all kinds of energies, like small modular nuclear reactors to be microgridded for our data centers and our AI data, to do all kinds of work with hydrogen and using renewable natural gas as our energy source for heavy trucking. It's affordable and it's less polluting. All of these things can be done. So I think we can do more that way rather than to holistically kill our economy.
Thank you. Okay, Mary, you'll go first with this one. This one's a little long too. With the implementation of the Graduate Student Union at WSU, budgets are even more strained to pay the higher salaries across campus. How will you get more legislative funding for WSU to help support these students who are essential to research and teaching?
Right, the starving graduate student, but so, you know, I haven't really grappled with this issue completely. I see where the work that the graduate students have become vital to our next gen economy. I've met a couple of postdoctorates that are doing phenomenal work. One woman who's doing T-cell generation for cancer treatment. I think she's a remarkable individual. Another energy person who's mastered an energy technology that makes a battery that's deployable to renewable natural gas or hydrogen. And I think that work is important, and we need to really help those folks move forward and make those commercialized so that they will benefit our communities moving forward. I would love to see those people be able to really stay in our communities and develop those new industries, similar to what Ed Schweitzer did when he was young and built such a wonderful business that has been the sustaining force for new innovation in the sector and also in our community. And I would like to see us make sure that those people that are doing graduate work have opportunities then to come out to the rural parts of our communities and really start their own companies and be able to hire wonderful, smart people to reinvest into rural towns, small towns. And so to me, I need to really sit down more with the graduate students and see what their hopes, dreams, and aspirations are, and see how it fits with my vision for reinvigorating, a millennial renaissance for rural America.
Thank you. Patrick, how will you get more legislative funding for WSU to help support the students who are essential to research and teaching?
I think fundamentally some of my answer is actually the same. It's not a issue I am have been deeply steeped in. I would definitely be talking with the university as to what their needs are. And I do wholeheartedly agree that places like WSU are our incubators for the future. We need that base that's developing those new technologies and creating those business opportunities. And that's, how we continue to diversify our economy here, how we continue to move forward, and how we continue to give, people hope for, things like climate change and other existential threats through that kind of research. So it would be a priority to make sure that they had the funding and resources they need. But I would need to understand more of the details of why they don't have it now, what they do need, and how that can then turn back into an investment. Do they need some additional funding now that then is somewhat tailored to cause more incubator businesses to form in the area, and then that increases a revenue and tax base that can then pay off some of that initial injection of money. So how can we work in a, to use a word, a holistic way to build that economy off of that research.
Thank you. Okay, Patrick, your turn. What specific policies do you plan to advocate for that will support rural communities in our district, especially in terms of economic development and access to resources?
So there's a couple different, we're not all the same town here, right? Pullman has different issues than Dayton does, and different issues than Cheney or Reardon. So I'm always reluctant to do a one size fits all brush for these things. And so I really think it would be a lot of working with communities on what their needs are. What is the small thing that can be done for them to get the biggest benefit? And that's always a great place to start. But as far as a specific policy, one thing I've noticed that's relatively uniform through most of the towns I've been in, and it's actually one of the reasons I got into this, is that it is hard to be a small town in Washington right now. You see, I've lived here for most of my life, and I continue to see closed up businesses on our main streets. Sometimes a place opens for a year or two, it doesn't quite make it, and it's really hard to get those going. And so one thing that I would like to be doing is improving the balance between, it should not at all be cost effective for a landlord to hold on to an empty building. It should be more profitable for them to lease that out to somebody and to change the dynamics of that relationship so that they don't stay empty, and to make it easier for a business to start there. Oftentimes there's code requirements that you have to both start your business from scratch, repair all the building, get it fully up to code that it wasn't built at, and take all your risk the first year. And I feel like we should be able to defer some of that code requirement over time as they begin to become a successful business, so that they don't have to be there day one.
Thank you. Mary, what specific policies do you plan to advocate for that will support rural communities in our district?
Thanks. I've been thinking about this a lot this year, and I'm excited to put together policies that may get us off of the stopped space we're at. I feel like a lot of our communities are nearly flatlined and we've got the paddles out. So how do you start something up from scratch? And I look at our biggest export out of rural small towns is our kids, who are highly educated, highly skilled, very motivated and hardworking, but they don't have a place to come back to. And that's my fundamental question. How do we get that done? So my thoughts have been around the lines of forming a rural development fund through the Community Economics Revitalization Board that will provide low cost or no cost financing and grants for young people that are wanting to bring commercialization of their innovations into a small community, developers and architects that want to build neighborhoods that are small town-esque, that would allow them to revitalize our downtowns simultaneously, that bring in new brilliant employees and like-minded people into our communities that are innovative and have peer support as they innovate and develop in rural America. And that's the millennial renaissance that I'm talking about. Let's have a grand homecoming into rural America and make our small towns new and vibrant again. And how we do that, I don't know, but I think that we need skill sets at that curb board that will bring envisioning and high level people that can bring communities together and that they can look at what they could be best at to attract like hubs of people that do similar things that will support each other. Their kids can play together and grow up together and their grandkids can be there forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mary, you're gonna go first for this one. And I did have to paraphrase a little bit, so apologies. Hold on. What are your thoughts on 9th District taxpayers supporting multinational corporations by tax benefits for harmful commercial wind turbine installations?
Yes, I agree. This is the fundamental concern of our time. It is the land and her people and the promise, the covenant that families in America can own and prosper and raise their families and build wealth over generations. And as we see corporations coming in and exploiting the fact that our rural economy, our ag economy has been deeply destroyed by these policies over the last 4 years plus, it has devastated the base foundational piece that stabilizes and secures our country. We hold a vision, an old culture, a unique culture that is nearly extinguished, that needs to be preserved, because we hold in our communities here in Eastern Washington something unique and rare. It is the heart and soul of what the American promise is about. And I can give a quick example. This last week, I've learned that some of the biggest farms in my district have been bought by global equity funds, retirement funds, and that money does not land in our communities to prosper our people and our cities and towns and our state and our nation. It goes elsewhere. And I'm very, very concerned about this process really undermining the sovereignty of the American people.
Thank you. Patrick, what are your thoughts on 9th District taxpayers supporting multinational corporations by tax benefits for harmful commercial wind turbine installations?
Right, so I will actually kind of pick up a little bit where Mary left off there. It is a threat, these large funds buying up things, including property and housing and farmland, all of it. That definitely, we need to have more control over that kind of exploitation. Those companies should not be able to just come in and exploit our communities that way. As far as specifically the wind turbines, I would say, I'll step back one step first. I don't think we should be using our tax dollars to support multinational businesses, wind turbine or Amazon or otherwise. We need to be putting that into businesses that are based in our communities, that reinforce our communities and don't funnel the money outside of our homes. Specifically with the wind turbines, I think that there's a couple nuances in that I think that people should have the right to choose what they do with their land, and if they want to put some new technology, be it a turbine or otherwise, there, if there's somebody to work with, but they also shouldn't be forced into that economically and not really have that choice, even if it appears they do on paper. Those companies should also be fully responsible for any decommissioning, any maintenance. That should never be a burden on the landowner. So I don't support supporting the multinationals.
Thank you. And your turn is first. What can be done to lower the cost of tuition at our state institutions? Are athletics worth the cost?
Oh my, so there was a slant to that question.
That wasn't me.
Oh, I know. So, I mean, the question kind of has two facets there. One was fundamentally about lowering the cost of education, but then also, how athletics play into that. And in a lot of cases, the athletics programs end up being a fundraiser, but in general, personally, in my life, I was one of the folks who was nose down in their book and not really focused on my school's sports teams, and always wondered, this is an institute of higher education. Why is so much of our construction budget going to things that don't have to do with that? But as I, got more involved in, how these things were actually funded and where the money was coming from, it became a lot more nuanced. So I'm going to sidestep the athletics portion of that because, I think in some cases they can actually be a income source from the ticket sales and other money from donors who are really invested in the sports team. But the schools do need to be better funded from the state as part of our commitment to education. And they need to be able to keep up with the salaries of educators in specialized fields. Having been in the computer science and computer security realm in a previous portion of my life, it was impossible to find well-trained students coming out of schools because anybody with the skills and background was being paid significantly more in industry. And so the people who were at the schools teaching didn't have the knowledge that was needed to pass on. And we need to be able to have the resources at the state level to shift that balance, because those people are, as we both indicated, our future of business.
Thank you. Mary, what can be done to lower the cost of tuition at our state institutions? Are athletics worth the cost?
Well, I would say this. I had a phone call last spring from a person who's a property manager in Pullman. And he said that they had 900 units vacant during the school year last year. And the school came to the legislature asking for more funding because student enrollment had dropped off, and thus the baseline maintaining of a university was becoming, spread amongst fewer paying students. And so that was a complicated problem. So my question and my colleague's question as well is, what would happen if you lowered the cost to go to college? Would you not pick up more students? And what is the sweet spot in that number? And I think all of us have had, in our business lives and in farming, when times are bad, it's amazing how you can pick through a budget and find stuff that you were enjoying but didn't really need. And so I think that, that belt tightening is going to happen across the board this year. I think it's going to be a struggle in both of the budget committees that I sit in. And in terms of the sports, I think also there can be that is a real interesting conundrum that WSU finds itself. I saw Gonzaga joined for the basketball piece. I think that builds a lot of camaraderie, but I think that there's a lot of places in that budget now that we have such a fundamental change in the conference that we need to really think about how we restructure. Gives us an opportunity to take off some things that maybe weren't essential in the current circumstances and still keep an opportunity for students that get enrolled on a sports scholarship, which is so important for so many families.
Thank you. Okay, Mary. Washington State is losing businesses when most of the country is seeing an increase in the number of businesses from 2019 through 2023. Why is this happening and how do we fix it?
The chickens came home to roost. We grew a government and we didn't grow an economy in places that we could have. I can give an example. Last week, Lamb Weston announced that they were closing their plant in Connell. 375 longtime employees are no longer going to be in Connell. These are families that are generationally working at a plant. It's a one company town. Connell is at risk of becoming generationally impoverished as a result. And it has one of the top performing school systems in the state. And it's a tragedy. So why did that happen? It happened in large part because of our energy policy. Lamb Weston's energy costs went up by double, and the price and their labor costs as well, and the price per pound of potatoes went too high. Simultaneously, the energy policies made it more difficult for families to meet their family budget, and so people tightened their belt and didn't go to restaurants as much. So the foot traffic in restaurant has really dropped off a lot. 90% of potatoes, processed potatoes, are eaten in restaurants globally. And Lamb Weston produces roughly 60% of the global supply of McDonald's French fries, which are very good. But so the problem then is, how do you remedy that on a company that has obligations across the world? And they really found themselves in a place that they have to reorganize and regroup. And I would say that that's why many of the companies that are facing the existential threat of losing their natural gas, which is required for manufacturing and food processing, is a real issue. It's putting cold water on new development. And while I'm working on getting surface water delivery to the basin, and we're having some construction, we're losing it because of our energy policy.
Thank you. Patrick, Washington State is losing businesses. Why is this happening and how do we fix it?
There's no one reason. It is a lot of factors in different areas causing different problems. Obviously, for a major manufacturing plant, having to actually pay for the costs of their resources, where they don't have to do that in some other states, has caused some people to move elsewhere. I don't know that quite the right way to thread that needle, because those companies just end up exploiting a different community in a different way. But we do need to also hold them to a standard where they're not causing long-term impacts to all of us. As far as the smaller businesses too, obviously, with our main streets, being a little bit closed up, it is hard to have a vibrant community going, and you need to make sure that it's those opportunities we were talking about earlier. I think we both touched on this, where you need new businesses coming into, new technologies being offered, but not everybody's going to be working in a technology field. We also need different services, and we need to pivot some things too. A clothing store has more trouble now that there is an Amazon dropping a package on your door. But something where it's a community gathering, where people get to interact with each other, they can't really get that in the same satisfying way online. So we need to change some of the business types that we have in our communities to keep up with the threats from some of these larger companies that are undercutting local businesses and that we can't fully compete against. So we need to provide different opportunities.
Thank you. Is this my last question or do we have time for another one after this?
Next question.
Oh, okay, I guess it's the last question. Okay, and a reminder, I will type up the rest for our candidates if there are more. Okay. Patrick, it's your turn to go first. Distinctions between East and West Washington were mentioned. Would it be better to separate the two politically in order to address the concerns of 9th District residents?
No, we both rely on each other in way too many different ways. And it is a situation where, yes, there is a different lifestyle and some different needs, but we both need each other to be financially viable. As we've just been talking about, some of the baseline things for our schools, we need the tax base from the large companies and the large population base in other places to provide the supplemental funding to allow a baseline for these locations. So we get a fair amount from the tax base on the other side, but we need to be working to make sure that we still have what we need for our own locations and our own identity and our own culture.
Thank you. Mary, would it be better to separate East and West Washington politically in order to address the concerns of 9th District residents?
I think it would be better that we could understand each other better. So in that light, I've been writing policies to help improve the ecosystem in the urban environment of Central Puget Sound so that we can clean up the watershed by investing in wastewater treatment, in investing in stormwater technology so that we can reutilize those stormwater for urban irrigation and greening of the city. I've been doing bills that talk about the way that we do urban construction and urban renewal by making opportunities for buildings to have more sustainable buildings with greenery incorporated and fresh air incorporated into the building so that it will actually cool and the buildings will use less money, less energy, more fundamentally. So I've been working on the ideas of opening up corridors through the urban canyon so that there can be a more green and natural habitat so people can connect better with each other and nature. It calms the city. When you do this, there's double-blind studies that show that if you do this kind of thing, gun violence will be reduced by 1/3. So I think that there's many things that we can incorporate into our understanding of natural resource stewardship that can be enhance the quality of life of all Washingtonians. And to that end, I've been committing a lot of my time and energy to make that case. And I think that we're making progress on that issue. And I also think that our side of the state needs to be considered and not marginalized in any way. And I hope that in this next session, we can do that.
Thank you. Okay, it is time for closing remarks. So since Mary went first last time, we'll start with Patrick. You have 3 minutes.
3.
I said 3.
Oh, 30.
I thought I got 30, so you know.
Did I say 30? I meant 3.
No, I'll take 30, Mary gets a 3.
Knock yourself out.
Oh, I don't have that many words to say, especially not in this sort of environment. I much rather prefer talking with small groups where they actually get to talk back to me than talking at people. So as far as my closing remarks, you know, I think that there are a lot of opportunities here and that, you know, despite a lot of challenges, our communities show a lot of perseverance and we just need to work on those things that, you know, I'll give a quick example. I was in Dayton the other day and one of their big issues is, you know, getting a swimming pool put in. I mean, the swimming pool would be chump change at the state level, but it would be a big impact to their community from you know, making it be a comfortable home, place where people come back to, people want to come into from the neighboring towns. So I think there's a lot of things where there are services we can be providing at the state level that won't significantly impact the state budget, but would make a huge difference to our towns. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with all of the communities and find those places where we can make a big difference without making a big impact. As I mentioned earlier, I really feel this job is to be as a representative. Please tell your friends and families, my phone number and my email address are up on my website. I'm very happy to hear from people. I want to know your concerns. I want to know your lived experiences, what can make your lives and your neighbors' lives better. I've had mine. It's definitely flavored how I look at things, but I'm here to listen and to do that representation that we've both been talking about in Olympia, because there is a disconnect in what the west side versus the east side, right? And we've all known that it's been around forever. And I want to work there to serve you, and that is it. So I'm Patrick, and please vote.
Thank you. Mary, closing remarks, 3 minutes, begins now.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity again, for a time that we can spend together and have a really fun and robust and civil conversation about issues that matter to people in our area. I think that the communities that we serve in the 9th District are phenomenal, full of really salt of the earth people that work hard and want to live a peaceful and a meaningful life, right? And so we have this community that I think deserves to have the ability to prosper here in our communities without having policies imposed on us that make it harder for us to have a sustainable and durable economy. And I would like to see us be able to reverse that. The how will be very difficult if we continue to take the resources out of the hands of the decision makers and the leaders in our community and the citizens in our community. We need a legitimate seat at the table, and we need to be heard. The resources that we can create in our region are real and significant. Agriculture is either one or two of the economic drivers. It goes back and forth between aerospace and agriculture. Those are the resources that prosper all of us in our towns and in the state, and also they secure the security of our nation. Investing in us here, giving us access to the infrastructure like real legitimate access to good broadband, even to the farthest end of the gravel road, matters. That's where the economy lives. It also matters that our innovators and our creators and our risk takers have the ability to come here and stay here and build long-term American dream here in our communities, that we stop exporting the best resource that we have, and that's our kids that we've worked so hard to educate and make good people. We need to work hard to give them a chance. And how we do that is by state policy that recognizes that there should be nothing about us without us in the policies that are being put upon the people of Eastern Washington. And I am excited to go back to Olympia and to voice our concerns in meaningful ways with the relationships that I have developed and the respect that I have for my colleagues. And it's a mutual respect that we have for each other. I think that this session is going to be different. I think that we're all, as a community and as a nation, tired of the rancor. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to talk to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you both, and thank you both for joining us today. And thank everyone for joining us today. And if you're on the Zoom, thank you. Thank you to the Neill Public Library for hosting us. A few reminders real quick. Voter registration ends October 28th online and by mail. You can register up to Election Day at the Auditor's Office in Colfax. Ballots will begin sending out on October 18th. On your ballot, please sign your ballot, and also there will be 4 initiatives on your ballot. If you would like information about yes votes and no votes on any of those initiatives, we have fact sheets in the back. And Election Day is November 5th, a Tuesday. Please vote. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much. That was really good. Really good. Thanks.
No, actually, it was great. It was, I mean, I could see the movement every now and then, but really helped keep me in line. Yeah. Hello. Hi, Emily.